Ethan Rivers stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately felt his breath catch in his throat. The intergalactic university sprawled before him like a living constellation, its crystalline towers reaching toward twin purple moons that hung in an amber sky. Floating platforms carried students of every imaginable species between buildings that seemed to breathe with bioluminescent light. This was his new home for the next year, and he was already feeling overwhelmed. The 22-year-old human clutched his acceptance letter tighter as he navigated through the bustling arrivals area. Beings with tentacles, wings, and extra limbs moved past him with practiced ease, their conversations creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonious tones that his universal translator struggled to keep up with. He had prepared for this moment for months, studying alien cultures and customs. But nothing could have truly readied him for the reality of being one of only 50 humans, accepted into the most prestigious educational institution in the galaxy, finding his place, the dormitory. Assignment scanner beeped cheerfully as Ethan approached, projecting a holographic map that led him through corridors, lined with doors that adjusted their size and shape based on the occupant's needs. His room was on the 7th floor of the Harmony Wing, specifically designed for interspecies housing. Experiments. The university believed that different species learning to coexist in close quarters would prepare them for diplomatic and scientific collaborations in the future. Ethan's door recognized his biosignature and slid open with a soft chime. The room was split into two distinct halves, one clearly designed for human needs with familiar furniture and lighting, while the other side looked like something from a dream. Crystalline formations grew from the walls, casting rainbow reflections across surfaces that seemed to shift and change color based on some unknown rhythm. A platform bed hovered 3 feet off the ground, surrounded by what looked like floating meditation orbs. He set his bags down carefully, trying not to disturb anything on the alien side of the room. The university had mentioned his roommate would be from a highly advanced species, but they had been frustratingly vague about the details. All he knew was that she was a third-year student majoring in interdimensional physics, and that her species was known for their peaceful nature and incredible intellect. The first meeting, a melodic humming filled the air, and Ethan turned toward the door just as it opened again. His new roommate entered, and every thought in his head immediately scattered like startled birds. She was the most beautiful being he had ever seen, standing nearly 6 feet tall with skin that looked like it had been carved from living sapphire crystal. Her hair flowed like liquid starlight, shifting between silver and deep blue as she moved. And her eyes were pools of violet that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She wore flowing robes that seemed to be made of the same material as her hair, constantly shifting colors in response to her movements. When she noticed him standing there, clearly staring, her expression shifted to one of polite curiosity rather than annoyance. Her lips curved into what he hoped was a smile, revealing teeth that sparkled like diamonds. "You must be Ethan Rivers," she said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Zara Velthius of Kepler 442b. I hope our cohabitation will be mutually beneficial." Ethan realized he had been standing there with his mouth slightly open and quickly composed himself. "Yes. Hi, I'm Ethan. It's really great to meet you, Zara. This is all pretty incredible." He gestured around the room, then at the view of the campus through their large window. Zara tilted her head slightly, a gesture he would later learn indicated curiosity among her people. "This is your first time away from Earth, is it not? I can sense your excitement and nervousness. Your emotions are quite vibrant. You can sense my emotions?" Ethan asked, fascination overriding his embarrassment. "My species possesses limited telepathic abilities," Zara explained, moving gracefully to her side of the room. "We evolved the ability to sense the emotional states of others as a survival mechanism. I hope this does not make you uncomfortable. I can attempt to block out your feelings, if you prefer privacy." Building understanding over the next few days, Ethan found himself completely captivated by his mysterious roommate. Zara was unlike anyone he had ever met, not just because she was alien, but because of her incredible intelligence and unexpected moments of humor. She would spend hours working on equations that looked like abstract art to him, her crystalline fingers dancing through holographic displays as she manipulated complex mathematical concepts that existed in dimensions his human brain could barely comprehend. But it was during their evening conversations that Ethan truly began to fall under her spell. Despite her advanced intellect, Zara was genuinely curious about human culture and emotions. She would ask him about Earth customs, about human relationships, about the way his species experienced love and friendship. In return, she shared stories about her homeworld, where crystal cities grew from the ground like living things, and her people communicated as much through shared emotions as through words. "Your species fascinates me," Zara admitted one evening as they sat together reviewing their respective coursework. "Humans feel everything so intensely, so passionately. My people experience emotions differently, more like gentle currents than the fierce storms I sense in you." Ethan looked up from his xenobiology textbook, meeting her violet gaze. "Is that good or bad?" "It is beautiful," she said softly, and for a moment, he could have sworn he felt something warm and electric pass between them. Dangerous territory. As days turned into weeks, Ethan found himself looking forward to their conversations more than his actual classes. Zara would help him with his more challenging assignments, her patient explanations making even quantum archaeology seem approachable. In return, he shared human literature and music with her, watching in delight as her crystalline skin would shift colors in response to different emotional passages or melodies. They had developed a comfortable routine of studying together, and the evenings often sitting closer than strictly necessary as they worked through complex problems or discussed the philosophical implications of their coursework. Ethan was becoming increasingly aware that what he felt for Zara was moving far beyond simple friendship or even attraction. There was something deeper growing between them, something that made his heart race every time she smiled or touched his hand while explaining a difficult concept. But he also knew they were walking into dangerous territory. The university had strict policies about interspecies relationships, policies that existed for both cultural and biological reasons. Students who violated these rules faced immediate expulsion and deportation back to their home worlds. The penalties were severe because the university believed such relationships could lead to diplomatic incidents between worlds or psychological damage to the individuals involved. Yet, as Ethan watched Zara's skin shimmer with soft lavender hues, while she concentrated on her work, her telepathic abilities unconsciously picking up on his growing feelings for her, he found himself caring less and less about the rules. Some connections, he was beginning to believe, were worth any risk. Growing closer the weeks at the intergalactic university passed like a beautiful dream for Ethan. His friendship with Zara had blossomed into something deeper and more meaningful than he had ever experienced. They spent their evenings together not just studying, but sharing stories, dreams, and quiet moments that felt stolen from time itself. Zara's telepathic abilities meant she could sense his growing feelings, though she never mentioned it directly. Instead, her crystalline skin would shift to warm golden hues whenever he was near. Betraying emotions, she kept carefully controlled. Their study sessions had evolved into something more intimate. They would sit on the soft carpet between their two sides of the room, sharing the neutral space as they worked through assignments together. Ethan loved watching Zara's graceful movements as she manipulated holographic equations, her starlight hair catching the light from the floating orbs around her bed. Sometimes, when she was deep in concentration, she would unconsciously hum melodies from her homeworld, filling their room with sounds that seemed to resonate in his very soul. "Your mathematical approach is quite creative," Zara observed one evening, as she reviewed his quantum mechanics homework. "Humans solve problems differently than my species. You use intuition, where we use pure logic. It is refreshing." Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest at her praise. "My professor back on Earth always said I thought outside the box. I guess that translates across species." Zara's violet eyes met his, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. "Perhaps that is why I find your company so compelling," she said softly. "You help me see solutions I would never have considered." The warning, their peaceful routine was interrupted when Professor Kane, the stern administrator responsible for dormitory oversight, paid them an unexpected visit. The tall gray-skinned being from Rigel Prime had a reputation for strict enforcement of university policies, and his presence in their doorway made Ethan's stomach clench with anxiety. "Miss Velthes," Mr. Rivers, Professor Kane said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate obedience. "I trust your living arrangement has been satisfactory thus far." "Yes, Professor," Zara replied, her tone carefully neutral. "We have found our cohabitation to be academically beneficial." Professor Kane's pale eyes scanned their room, taking in the scattered study materials and the way they were sitting, perhaps closer than strictly necessary. "I am pleased to hear it. However, I feel it is important to remind you both of the university's policies regarding interspecies relationships. These rules exist for the protection of all students and the preservation of diplomatic relations between our worlds." Ethan felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger. "We're just roommates and study partners, Professor? Nothing more?"
"Of course," Professor Kane said,
though his tone suggested he found this claim questionable. "Nevertheless," I thought, "it prudent to remind you that violations of these policies result in immediate expulsion and permanent deportation. The university takes a very dim view of students who cannot maintain appropriate boundaries." After the professor left, an uncomfortable silence settled over their room. Zara's skin had shifted to deep blue, almost matching her hair, which Ethan had learned indicated distress or concern among her people. "He suspects something," she said quietly, not meeting Ethan's eyes. "Let him suspect," Ethan replied, surprising himself with the fierce protectiveness in his voice. "We haven't done anything wrong, haven't we?" Zara asked, finally looking at him. "I can sense your feelings, Ethan. They grow stronger each day. I must confess that my own emotions toward you have become quite complicated." Jex is concerned the tension in their room was broken the next day, when Zara's friend Jex came to visit. The being from Proxima Centauri resembled a walking tree, with bark-like skin and leaves that rustled when they moved. Jex had been Zara's friend since her first year, and their concern for her was immediately apparent. "Zara, you must be careful," Jex said in their whisper-soft voice, their leaves trembling with worry. "There are rumors spreading about you and your human roommate. Some students are saying you spend too much time together, that your behavior appears too intimate for mere friendship." Zara's crystalline skin flickered between colors, betraying her emotional turmoil. "Ethan and I are simply friends who share academic interests." "Are you?" Jex asked gently. "Because when I observe you together, I see something deeper. Your bioluminescent patterns change in his presence, Zara. You glow with happiness when he speaks. This is dangerous territory for both of you." Ethan felt his heart sink as he listened to their conversation from his desk across the room. He knew Jex was right, but hearing the concern in their voice made the reality of their situation hit home. They were playing with fire, and if they got caught, both their futures would be destroyed. A moment of truth that evening. After Jex had left, Ethan and Zara sat in their usual spot between their two halves of the room. But instead of studying, they simply looked at each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between them. "We should probably maintain more distance," Zara said finally, though her voice lacked conviction. "Probably," Ethan agreed, but he made no move to get up or return to his side of the room. "It would be the logical choice," she continued, "the safe choice." "Logic isn't everything," Ethan said softly. "Sometimes the heart knows things that the mind can't understand." Zara's skin shifted to warm golden tones, and she reached out tentatively to touch his hand. The moment their skin made contact, Ethan felt a jolt of electricity run through him. Through her telepathic abilities, he could sense her emotions as clearly as his own. Confusion, fear, but underneath it all, a growing love. That matched his own feelings perfectly. "This is dangerous," she whispered, but she didn't pull her hand away. "I know," Ethan replied, turning his hand over to intertwine their fingers, "but I don't care anymore. What I feel for you is stronger than any rule they could make." "Are discovered," Zara said, her violet eyes searching his face. "We could lose everything. Our educations, our futures, our chances to make a difference in the galaxy. And if we don't follow our hearts," Ethan said, "we'll lose something even more important. We'll lose each other." For a long moment, they sat in silence, hands clasped. both knowing they had crossed a line from which there might be no return. Whatever happened next would change both their lives forever. The Discovery 3. Weeks had passed since Ethan and Zara acknowledged their feelings for each other, and they had been the happiest and most terrifying weeks of Ethan's life. They had been careful, maintaining the appearance of simple friendship in public while stealing precious moments of intimacy in the privacy of their room. Their love had grown deeper with each passing day, transcending the barriers of species and culture through their shared connection. But their careful charade came crashing down on a Tuesday morning when Dean Voss arrived at their door with Professor Kane and 2 security officers. The Dean was an imposing figure from Alpha Centauri, with silver skin that reflected light like a mirror and eyes that seemed to see everything. "Miss Velthus, Mr. Rivers," Dean Voss said, their voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "We have received reports of inappropriate conduct between you two. Reports that suggest you have violated the university's strict policies regarding interspecies relationships." Ethan felt his blood turn to ice as he looked at Zara, whose crystalline skin had gone completely pale, almost transparent with fear. They had been so careful, but somehow their secret had been discovered. "Dean Voss," Zara began, but the dean raised a hand to silence her. "Evidence has been presented to the administration," Dean Voss continued. "Recordings of intimate conversations, documentation of extended time spent together beyond what is appropriate for roommates, and testimony from multiple witnesses who have observed behavior inconsistent with platonic friendship." "Who reported us?" Ethan asked, anger flaring in his chest. "That is not your concern," Professor Kane interjected. "What matters is that you have both violated university policy and brought shame upon this institution." The accusation. Dean Voss stepped forward, holding a datapad that displayed holographic images and audio recordings that made Ethan's heart sink. Someone had been watching them, documenting their private moments, building a case against them. The recordings showed them holding hands, sharing quiet conversations, and gazing at each other with obvious affection. "The evidence is clear, Dean," Voss said. "You have engaged in a romantic relationship despite being fully aware of the university's policies. Miss Velthus, as a third-year student, should have known better than to involve yourself with a first-year human student. Your actions show a complete disregard for the cultural and biological protections these policies provide." "Our relationship has harmed no one," Zara said, finding her voice at last. "We have maintained our academic standing and have not interfered with any other students or diplomatic relations. The harm," Professor Kane said coldly, "is to the integrity of this institution and the trust placed in us by the governments of 1,000 worlds. These policies exist because interspecies relationships can lead to psychological damage, cultural contamination, and diplomatic incidents that affect entire star systems." Ethan stepped forward, his protective instincts overriding his fear. "Respect, Professor. That's complete nonsense. Zara and I have helped each other grow and learn. Our relationship has made us both better students and better beings. How can love ever be harmful?" "Love," Dean Voss repeated, as if the word left a bad taste in their mouth. "Young human, you know nothing of love. What you feel is simple, biological. Attraction amplified by the exotic nature of interspecies contact. It will fade, but the damage to your psychological development and cultural identity could last a lifetime." The crisis, before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the dormitory. Emergency lights bathed the hallways in red, and an automated voice announced a critical situation in the university's main reactor core. The building shook. As power fluctuations caused systems throughout the campus to malfunction, all students must evacuate immediately, the voice continued. Reactor containment failure imminent. This is not a drill. Chaos erupted as students poured from their rooms. Panic spreading through the corridors as beings of every species rushed toward the evacuation routes. But Dean Voss held up a hand, stopping Zara and Ethan from joining the exodus.
You too well?
Remain here under guard until this situation is resolved, the dean commanded. Your disciplinary hearing will proceed as scheduled. You can't keep us here during an emergency evacuation, Ethan protested, but Professor Kane stepped closer, clearly prepared to enforce the dean's orders. That's when Zara's skin began to glow with intense golden light, her telepathic abilities reaching out across the campus. Her eyes widened with horror as she processed the information she was receiving from other telepathic students and faculty. The reactor failure isn't an accident, she said urgently. I can sense the thoughts of the engineering students near the core. Someone has sabotaged the containment systems. If it breaches completely, it will destroy not just the university, but the entire planet. Dean Voss's silver skin reflected the alarm lights, their expression shifting from authority to concern. How can you know this? Her telepathic range extends much further than most of her species, Ethan said, understanding immediately. She can connect with minds across the entire campus when she's emotionally heightened. Working together, there has to be a way to fix it, Ethan said, his mind racing. Zara, can you maintain contact with the engineers? Guide them through a repair process? I can try, she said, her skin now pulsing with brilliant light as she extended her consciousness across the university. But the quantum resonance patterns required for reactor repair are beyond most species' comprehension. The mathematics are incredibly complex. Not for us working together, Ethan said, grasping her hands. You can access the knowledge from multiple engineering minds simultaneously. And I can help you process the information using human intuitive problem solving. We've done this before with our homework. Dean Voss and Professor Kane watched in amazement as Ethan and Zara joined their minds through her telepathic abilities, creating a unique hybrid consciousness that combined her species' logical precision with human creativity and intuition. Together, they began formulating solutions to problems that neither could have solved alone. The containment field needs to be recalibrated, Zara said, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality as she spoke for both of them. But the standard approaches won't work because the sabotage has created quantum instabilities that require non-linear solutions. Through their connection, they guided the engineering teams through a series of repairs that seemed impossible. Their combined consciousness, finding patterns and solutions that saved thousands of lives. The reactor core stabilized just minutes before what would have been a catastrophic breach. The new understanding as the emergency passed and normal lighting returned to the dormitory. Dean Voss and Professor Kane stood in stunned silence. Had just witnessed something unprecedented. A level of cooperation and problem-solving that could only have been achieved through the unique bond between Ethan and Zara. Your connection, Dean Voss said slowly. It allowed you to accomplish something that our best engineers said was impossible. Love doesn't make us weaker, Ethan said, still holding Zara's hand as her skin gradually returned to its normal crystalline blue. It makes us stronger. Together, we can solve problems that neither of us could handle alone. Zara's friend Nira, a gentle being from the Vega system with butterfly-like wings, arrived just as the conversation was concluding. She had heard about the disciplinary action and come to offer support, but found herself witnessing something extraordinary instead. Dean Voss Nira said softly, I study interspecies psychology, and what I've observed here suggests that our policies may be based on outdated assumptions. The bond between Ethan and Zara represents evolution, not contamination, Dean Voss. It was quiet for a long moment. The reflective skin, showing the conflict of someone whose fundamental beliefs were being challenged by undeniable evidence. Perhaps, the dean said finally, it is time for the university to reconsider its policies. If interspecies connections can lead to the kind of breakthrough we witnessed today, then our rules may be preventing progress rather than protecting it. Professor Kane looked uncomfortable with this shift. But even he could not argue with the results they had all witnessed. Your disciplinary hearing is postponed indefinitely, Dean Voss announced. Instead, you will both participate in a new research program studying beneficial interspecies cooperation. Your relationship will be monitored, not for violation of rules, but as an example of what might be possible when different species truly connect. As the administrators left, Ethan and Zara found themselves alone again. Their love no longer a secret to be hidden, but a beacon of hope for the future. They had proven that love truly could conquer all, even the barriers between worlds and species. "So what happens now?" Ethan asked, pulling Zara closer. "Now," she said, her skin glowing with warm golden light, "we show the galaxy what two hearts can accomplish when they beat as one." Their story had become legend, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or politics, but simply two beings who choose to love each other despite every obstacle in their path. The end.